I'm Max Keiser. Max Keiser. Yeah.
Max.
This is the Keiser Report, hopefully. Yeah, Stacey.
I just want to follow up a little bit on that last episode we did, because here's a headline related to dead unicorns. Why the end is coming soon for the biggest tech bubble we've ever seen. Expect to see more dead unicorns. Unicorns, of course, in this context are companies, startups worth more than $1 billion. There's like a couple hundred of them in the United States. Well, he says about over half of them are actually 50% overvalued. This is Keith Wright, a professor at Villanova School of Business. So we should be seeing dead unicorns soon.
Well, the chase for returns over the past 10 years, as interest rates have remained zero, migrated into the startup space and the unicorn space. But the liquidity never came. The aftermarket never came. The cash flow never came. So now they all have to go over the cliff of the abyss, proving once again the world is flat.
Of course, their aim, these are dead unicorns held by Silicon Valley investors. They have deep pockets, and of course, they could afford to perhaps lose all of this. But they're competing with China, which has, I guess, a bigger market, but also more capital to work with. And, you know, they're in the race to see who can create more monopolistic sort of positions. Of course, these unicorn holders from Silicon Valley have Donald Trump to crush competition like ZTE, which was crushed. And now that brought China to the trade table. They're supposedly negotiating. Trump keeps on almost getting a trade deal with China and then backing out via tweet. So we don't know, but we do know that trade war averted. China vows to buy more from the U.S., but truce will take time. The consensus follows 2 days of negotiations between teams led by the Chinese Vice Premier Liu He and U.S. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin. So China has agreed to buy more U.S. agricultural goods and energy products. And this is supposed to close the, $375 billion trade gap with the United States.
Does China refer to these startups as unicorns or maybe dragons? I mean, is a unicorn is a global thing, I wonder. You know, it's mythologically
we'll have to ask.
Based on something, but, you know, I'm not sure. But, yeah, okay, so China says they're going to buy a lot more stuff from the U.S., and so Trump is having an effect. I mean, he's weighing into the minutia of trade deals, which no president has done that I can recall. Usually they just paint a broad stroke and hope for the best. So he's actually getting into the details of trade deals, so we'll see where that goes.
You do have to recognize that in the West, we're not seeing the coverage, the media coverage, and the actual power that China has on the ground over in Asia. Because I have seen reports that the reason why did Trump do the extraordinary thing of saying we need to come to the table because ZTE lost all these jobs. We don't want to destroy 75,000 jobs, and we don't want to destroy ZTE, and they apologized. Well, apparently there were all sorts of U.S. goods piling up at the ports over in China, and China has a huge buying power and exporting power, and all these U.S. companies have massive factories over in China. So they have a lot more leverage than we could possibly see here because, of course, our media doesn't cover it because they have a more important story that they're a little conspiracy theory that they're focused on. Nevertheless, they're China apparently has a lot of negotiating power. In terms of 2018 elections, midterm elections coming up in just a few short months, it's places like Iowa and Nebraska where they were really squealing about the impact on their agricultural exports. Some of these places, their number one export destination is China.
Yeah, they also have $4 to $5 trillion in reserves, more than $1 trillion or so in dollars. The dollar is still world reserve currency. So, yeah, they've got a lot of operating leverage on the ground, but macroeconomically speaking, the U.S. Federal Reserve Bank, Bank of New York, still has the ability to crush them at a moment's notice if we so choose.
They're equally powered. The world's largest debtor, the world's largest creditor. They are equally powered. They're equally powerful, and that is a great, huge fight. That is a fight of the next few decades. What is not a great power, which is no longer a great power, is the United Kingdom versus Germany, fighting the European Union versus trying to come up with a Brexit deal. I have two headlines here. This is from Bloomberg, and they often do this. I actually printed another article, but they change the headline all the time. But Boris Johnson warns May to get on with it and deliver Brexit. So he's warning that she has to get on with it. He wants to become the new prime minister, which probably makes more sense to have a clown in charge. Like Theresa May is just ineffective. You might as well have an ineffective clown, because we have a clown here. Italy has clowns. Everybody has clowns. This is a new policy. But the UK has admitted that they're going to have to pay a huge divorce bill in this Brexit exit if it ever happens.
Yeah, somebody said the Brexit deal is figuring out how to opt back in to various deals that the Brexit vote gave them the right to opt out. Right, so it's just, they added something like 30,000 more civil servants in the UK. And that's the whole point of Brexit, is to increase the size of government. Under Thatcher, the mandate was to take GDP and address it so that government was less a percentage of GDP. Brexit just reverses that whole trend. It makes government now a bigger part of GDP, which is highly anti-growth.
So, I mean, I'll read you some of Boris Johnson's exact quotes. He's the foreign secretary for the United Kingdom. Theresa May is the prime minister, in case you don't know. A lot of people might not hear much about the United Kingdom. But he said that outward free trading countries, what they want to hear from us is that we are getting on with it with confidence and brio and zap and dynamism. So that's what a clown does. You know, that's the equivalent of just going, honk, honk, ee, ooh, oops, squirting water. So
I like your idea that the UK needs a clown sufficient to compete with the Berlusconis in Italy, the Trump clownish behavior in America, and other global clowns. I mean, to compete in this global economy, you need a clown of Boris Johnson's caliber. He's a world-class clown.
Well, if you don't have the authority and the power to be a statesperson, then you might as well be a clown, because you've got to compete for global attention, right? So Johnson's comments, however, are his strongest since Theresa May's team agreed last week on a controversial compromise that could keep the UK tied to EU trade rules for years after the divorce. The proposal got a frosty reception from Brussels and prompted Jacob Rees-Mogg, who commands enough conservative lawmakers, to engineer a leadership challenge to say he was losing faith in Theresa May.
Look, the United Kingdom is part of the body of the European economy. It's a $7 trillion trading bloc. You know, the whole Brexit is like your liver deciding to separate from your body and to say, we're no longer part of the body, we're the independent liver. And by the way, everything that comes in and out of the liver, we now have to introduce another organ called the liver tax. And then, oh, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense. So we're going to have to reverse all that. There's no way to separate the UK from Europe. It cannot be done. It will not be done. If it does, it's in name only. They may change the color of their passport. But that's it. You cannot separate the two. Boris Johnson and they're delusional.
When we were just in New York, there were two guys walking behind me downtown, you know, the financial district, and I heard them, one guy complaining that his office was moving to Frankfurt because their office in London was closing down because of this Brexit thing. So I'm going to look at another headline here about the UK economy. It has been hit, definitely, by this whole Brexit derangement. Who knows what's happening, whether or not Brexit happens. I think people will still be talking about Brexit in 20, 30 years' time when it won't have actually happened. Nevertheless, landlords left with 4 shard skyscrapers worth of empty space in High Street bloodbath. And it's big companies like Jamie's Italian, all these chain shops.
Carluccio's.
They have a whole bunch of them listed here. But the fact is that in figures compiled for the Evening Standard, Collier's International forecasts that the bloodbath in the retail and restaurant sectors will leave at least 6.2 million square feet in the UK vacant this year. Of that, 630,000 square feet is in London. The property agent examined statistics from the local data company and Goad portal. It looked at stores which have closed either because firms have collapsed or restructured using a company voluntary arrangement, a move which allows businesses to quit stores or seek rent cuts. So they're using these CVAs, as they're called, so what is it called? Company voluntary agreement. And they're able to get out of all of these leases. And landlords are left holding the bill on these overpriced properties in a shrinking economy and with huge business rates on these small companies that the UK government is no longer going to be able to collect.
The whole Brexit vote, this idea of being independent, it defies 100 years of integration into Europe. It's absurd. I understand that everyone likes to be independent, but it's never, ever, ever going to happen in any meaningful sense if the United Kingdom. It's just never going to happen.
Of course, these new rules came out in the EU regarding privacy, for example, and all these tech companies had to change everything. And I just noticed that over the weekend, because we've lived in the United Kingdom for so long, I've had dozens and dozens and dozens of emails from all these British companies saying, due to new European privacy directives, here's our new policy on privacy.
Right.
So it was like, there are all these GIFs online about people throwing their computers out the window because of this hassle. But nevertheless, they're having to abide by these European regulations anyway in order to stay part of that the customs union.
And remember, the new passports of the new color has been manufactured by a French company. Well, we got to take a little bit of a break here. Don't go away. Much more coming your way. Welcome back to the Keiser Report. I'm Max Keiser. Time now to turn to Jose Rodriguez. He of Bitso.com. Jose, welcome back.
Thank you, Max. Always a pleasure being with you.
Well, it's great to have you back on the show. You're one of those guests that we've had going back to the early days of Bitcoin and who have really been part of the growth of this industry. And Bitso is now, I guess, the largest crypto and Bitcoin exchange in Latin America.
That's right. We just surpassed 500,000 users.
Well, it's phenomenal growth, and it shows that this coin, Bitcoin, has had really a profound impact on the global economy and the lives of millions of people all over the world who now understand what it's all about. Now, apparently, our show, Keiser Report, was responsible for installing a new leader in Mexico. That's what the press in Mexico is saying, that somehow Obrador is the result of Max Keiser. How will this impact the currency markets in Mexico and, I guess, Bitso?
Yeah. Well, right now there has been some fluctuation in the exchange rate. We are in the highest rate that we've seen in recent years. There's a lot of volatility and uncertainty. According to surveys, he is the one heading to be the president of Mexico, but there's still some over a couple of months for the election to take place. But it looks like after it's his third trying to be the Mexican president, and it looks like it's probably that he's going to be coming to power and much pushed by Keiser Report.
Oh, yeah. But, so in other words, you don't really have a scenario of impacting your business materially one way or another. But let me ask you this. The Mexican peso has tumbled by double digits, as have all the other emerging market currencies, as the U.S. dollar has soared in value. And how does this impact your business?
Yes. There are some people that like to invest or buy U.S. dollars, for example, where an election is coming. Before 1994, each 6 years that Mexico elections take place every 6 years, there used to be a huge devaluation and inflation every 6 years when an outgoing and incoming new president came in. So there's people that like to save in U.S. dollars, and there are some people that also, because of the volatility that they're having, they want to cover future payments in U.S. dollars or cover up. And, well, Bitcoin is a way of doing this in cryptocurrencies, but also, as we know, it's a way to moving money in and out of different markets.
Right. And to get back to the political scene for a moment, so Obrador is a leftist.
Yeah.
And so with this, in your view, the domestic economy, does it need a bit of a lefty to come in and take away some of the excesses one finds when the right is in power for a long time? Or what are your views?
Yeah, so he's viewed as the most leftist option. But what is funny is that because he has had this presidential run being so successful with leftist and protective policies, the other candidates are also doing the same type of policy. So even the ones perceived as far right are doing also those kinds of policies.
So he's moved the needle of discourse. And so going forward, the policies would be in place on the regulatory front. How might they impact crypto? Because every country is now evolving regulatory framework for crypto. Some countries are openly trying to attract crypto business. Some countries are repelling the crypto business. Mexico, to me, given the history of the banking system, would benefit hugely from having a more crypto-based currency and better relations with crypto as just a way. It would be, to me, a left-wing issue, because here the problem is that there have been, some bad actors in the banking sector that have benefited, the richest of the rich. So your view on that?
Yeah, unfortunately, as you say, Mexico has had one of the biggest cases of money laundering in the financial system. We have one of the largest unfortunate cases, which is HSBC, for example. And right now, what happened in the other side, on the fintech side, is that they just passed the fintech law in Mexico at the beginning of the year. So right now, all the fintech industry is being regulated, and there are now some clear rules, including us as cryptocurrencies exchanges, which is good because now you know how you can interact with regulated players, for example, stockbrokers, banks, and different regulated entities. And there is some clarity of with whom do we have to work with in order to get, for example, more cryptocurrencies into the exchange. How are we going to interact different financial services, and how are we going to interconnect to the Mexico financial system? It was the Wild West, I would say, before last year.
Right. So you were in a bit of an island, an unregulated island, which has a certain appeal as a counterpoint to the banking system that was perceived as being run in an inefficient way, or a lot of bad apples, as some use that term. But what you're saying is that to grow the ecosystem at this point, to have some regulations that apply to everyone in the space, it gives you some interoperability between you as the crypto guy and everybody else out there, the banking, insurance, all the other financial products. So to that extent, the regulation is a net plus.
Yeah. And also, it's a way that you've seen it all over the world in other countries. Fintech has come to give more dynamic economy, and also bringing new players that probably are, for example, the unbanked, or people that don't have access to credit, or people that do not have access to financial services. So that is also an advantage that we have and other fintechs have, reaching out to these people and bringing into this economy and financial services that they wouldn't have access normally. So we make it grow and develop.
Right. So, in the early days of crypto, the word on the street was always this exchange got hacked, that exchange got hacked. But of course, since crypto is dominated by the best engineers and minds in the world that have gravitated toward this space, the incidence of these hacks has been reduced dramatically. Meanwhile, in the legacy banking system, not so much protection against hacks. So there's been a major hack of Mexican banks. Tell us about it. How does it impact your business, if at all?
Yes, there had been some delays in transfers. There were some rumors that banking system got hacked, that banks got hacked. There isn't much information flowing, but now there is some information that they were actually able to create this phony accounts and transfer money out of the banks. And how it has been impacted is that there's a contingency in the banking system, and there's delays in transfers. So, for example, there's a lot of users that withdraw money from Bitso or deposit into Bitso, and normally we did a great integration in which this is an instant transaction. And right now it's taking hours. And it's not only us; it's the whole banking system, because they're in contingency. They're flowing very slowly, and they're trying to find out what has happened, and they're doing the investigations internal.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, in the banking system, the number of hours and days it takes to clear trades could be 3 days, could be a normal clearing time. And if there's a problem, the system works so slowly that they many times can fix these problems before it's noticed because the whole thing kind of goes slowly. But with crypto on the scene, and as you point out, instant transactions, instant confirmations, when the legacy banking system slows up for any particular reason, it shows up quickly. People are aware there is a problem. So this is an interesting checks and balance. I understand actually in Mexico now, they're bringing on another exchange to compete with the current exchange. It's been around for 100 years. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, we only had one stock exchange in Mexico, which is called the Bolsa Mexicana de Valores. So different from, for example, in the U.S., where you have NASDAQ, you have BATS, you have New York Stock Exchange. Mexico, there was only one. So this also made that you had no competition, and there were no incentives, for example, to challenge someone for an IPO on different type of services, a better system, etc. So right now there's a new stock exchange called Viva, and they're just finishing up the last details to start running, and now they're going to compete for orders. Now they're going to compete for better technology, more IPO. So it's going to help develop also the
So
stuff.
it sounds like some competition now, and it's going to be better for everybody.
Yes, definitely. And one of the bets that they had is, as their CEO, they brought a very experienced person who has been leading venture capital funds, and she was like the president of Amex Cap, which is all the venture capital funds in Mexico. So probably we're going to see new players and startups coming and making IPOs in Mexico, because there aren't many IPOs in Mexico.
Mexico City is an unbelievably charming city that, well, I love to visit, and it should attract a huge crypto community above and beyond what is already there. You've already got a thriving one. You know, it's funny, we were talking yesterday, and I said, how did the earthquake impact your guys? And it's really a testament to the agility of this industry, and compare it to the legacy system, because the answer was, well, you know, we moved. The next week we were already in a new location. Now imagine if this happened to an old line bank, earthquake damage, and tons and tons of employees, legacy systems, old computer systems. They would still be figuring out what to do in the event. You guys, because it is crypto, because it is so agile, because it is a new paradigm, you were up and running in days at a new location, right?
Yeah, we have to be running 24/7. Unfortunately, our building got damaged, and we have to move out of there. But yeah, we were up and running. We were 24/7. We had some delays, for example, in customer service or answering tickets, but we kept on running, and we kept on business as usual.
Right. Tell me about the demographics of the customer base. You said you had 500,000 users.
Yeah.
How does that break down demographically?
So most of the users are between 25 to 40 years of age. We have made some surveys to see what is the type of profile, and we also see what type of people. So most of them are people that have either a bachelor or a master degree. They have some interest. Before it was only in tech and IT side. Now you're seeing more financial and economic people coming into the space, and also finding out if they want to trade, if they want to invest, if they want to move money, that there's an answer to all of this inside the crypto space. So more and more people besides the technical side are coming and being attracted into the trading space. And what we're also seeing that is very impressive is this new generation of traders that you hadn't seen any time in Mexico. Because right now we have more accounts than all stockbrokers in Mexico together. So we have more users than them.
This is amazing. So the culture of owning stock and owning equity and being a shareholder in the capitalist system was really not part of the Mexican culture.
No.
And you guys are a startup. You've been around, 5 or 6 years?
Yeah.
And you already have more accounts than all the stock brokerages combined.
Yeah.
So, and these people are now crypto savvy. They're trading savvy. And, I mean, that's how you build an economy, I would think.
Yeah, and also, I mean, they might get attracted by Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies. Last year was a great year in returns. And what happens afterwards is that they diversify and they go they start trying, oh, probably I should invest in precious metals, probably I should invest in stocks. So, yeah, as you say, this develops the economy, this develops investments, and now they're getting diversified. People that got a 20x, for example, last year, well, they're now experimented with stocks, for example, and they're trying to build a portfolio, which it's happening the other way around now.
And you guys possibly would also go into brokerage, right? You're thinking of that, or?
Right now, we are opening our institutional sales area. So we have been very good with retail customers, but we haven't been in the past so good with this personalized and institutional investor side. And that's something that we are focusing right now, especially me, on doing this. And we are also creating these bridges. For example, like you mentioned with the new Mexican stock exchange, we just made an event. We just got listed in Thomson Reuters with all our markets. Through Blockstream, we got listed also in nice data services. So we are getting all these bridges built for institutional investors to see how we are able to service and to bring information and financial
Sounds like a trip for us to Mexico City is coming up again soon. We must come.
You must.
Jose, thanks again for being on the Keiser Report.
Thank you very much, Max.
That's going to do it for this edition of the Keiser Report. With me, Max Keiser, Stacey Herbert. I want to thank our guest, Jose Rodriguez.